Hi everyone, welcome to What is TV. So today I've got Lindsay Ratcliffe and she's a customer experience designer. Been doing it for how many years would you say?
A while.
A while. And today she is going to speak to us primarily about user experience and customer experience, and also some of the challenges that we may face as designers, but also how we can overcome those challenges and what we can do going forward. So, Lindsay, can you just tell me, just a little bit about yourself, just so everyone out there can just know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, as Laith said, thanks also for inviting me here today. It's really exciting to be here today. I'm currently Director of Customer Experience at HomeServe Digital Global Technology Team.
Okay.
So, apologies for the corporate dress and the corporate environment we're at work today. So I ultimately look after our customers and the interactions. At the moment we're focusing on the digital interactions that customers do, and so that encompasses everything from UX on the web to web apps to mobile responsive. Okay. And actually one of the big things that I really like to focus on is thinking about customers, how they traverse all the different channels. So you might think about customers that come to the website, but then they might go from the website. They might have come from a TV advert to the website. They might go from the website to a call centre. And you actually need to make sure that experience is consistent across all of those channels, because customers don't understand stuff about different channels. They just want a single experience. They just want to achieve their goals with your brand.
Brilliant. And just from working with you, I know that you're not just doing this as an individual. You're also working with a team. So as an employer of UX designers, what are the main skills that you're looking out for as you begin to select the right people for your team?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a couple of key things. I think obviously I like to make sure that people have got a really good grounding, that they understand some of the basic stuff, not just that they've got a whizzy tizzy portfolio, because I think especially at the moment with there being a lot of templated sites, you can borrow templates and things like that. I think it's quite easy to fake a portfolio. So actually getting people to know that they can solve a problem, because ultimately that's what we are doing. You need to be able to understand what the problem is in the first place, and then to be able to break it down into its small components so that you can then start to solve that problem, and so that you can think. The kind of people that I look for are people that can think at a big picture, so they understand the whole picture, the big scale, but also that they can go down to those kind of micro interactions and understand how the whole thing hangs together. So I think that's the first thing, is having that good grounding and being able to do problem solving. The second key thing for me is also being a really good communicator. Because as you say, we're working in a team. It's very rare these days you get an opportunity to work on a project on your own. As a UX designer, as a CX designer, as a product designer, you are a cog in a part of a bigger team, and you need to be able to help other people on the team understand your ideas, your points of view, the evidence that you've gathered, and you need to be able to communicate your solutions and your rationale for those solutions. So I think being able to spell that out appropriately and being able to talk to different levels of stakeholders as well. So there are people on your team who are your peers, there are people on your team who are ultimately, your boss's boss's boss. So you've got to be able to communicate at different levels as well. So those are the things that I look for.
Great. On that point, I wanted to, because a lot of people are asking me, like, Laith, where are the best UX courses? What courses do you suggest would be the best to go for? Because a lot of the skills that you're looking for, where do you feel like are the best places that UX designers can go to learn these skills? So there's the soft skills of people, like being able to speak to people, communicate your ideas, but then there are also the kind of technical skills of heuristics and understanding customers and being able to diagnose problems. Where do you think are the best courses? I know the General Assembly has one. Where else have you seen?
So I suppose there's 3 or 4 different answers to that. I've actually worked with a couple of good UXers in my time who have never gone to design school at all, and actually they've learned a lot of the tricks of the trade on the job. So if for whatever reason you're not academically inclined, or it's not been your opportunity in life to go to school and do that stuff, if you can identify a good company that's got a good mentorship or apprenticeship program, get in there and actually learn from experience, because, even if you go to school and you do a degree, an MA or whatever else, you still need to have industry experience in order to really excel at that. So, don't be afraid if for whatever reason, you can't afford or you can't go to school. Just get on and get some experience. Otherwise, certainly I'm aware of a couple of really good courses if you're looking to do the post-grad stuff. So I think Brunel have got a really good one. I think also Kingston have also got a really good one.
We can put some of the links in the description box.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm currently having discussions with the guys over at Brunel to potentially offer some kind of professional support to the courses, so that people get industry insights as well as the kind of academic insights as well. So that's from an academic point of view. Then there's also, as you mentioned, there's General Assembly. That's a pretty good documented one, obviously. Then there's things like the Nielsen Norman Group. They kind of, I think predominantly now based in the US, but at one point they were kind of doing world tours and things. And getting yourself out to conferences, that's the other big one. Get on the network, get on the circuits. There's plenty of event nights that you can go to where you can kind of do peer-to-peer support and just understanding what other challenges, design challenges, problem-solving challenges people have faced. And then clearly going to YouTube and watching Late's channel and reading really good books. So there's plenty of really good books out there on the market that you need to read, and not just books that are a couple of years old, but books even that are 15, 20 years old that give you that real kind of deep level foundation understanding of the science behind the art that we do.
There's a book you Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things. That was a fantastic book about just basics on how some of the simplest things we don't think about, kettles for example, and cups and saucers, and why these things are so good, even though we don't really think about it. But
it's a great book, and actually, if you've not been there, go to the brand new design museum. Down at High Street.
I saw they redesigned everything.
It's just opened, and it's really good, and they actually featured Don Norman's book in there as well.
Wow. Okay, so the design museum, we've got to go there for UX designers. So
absolutely.
I kind of want to segue into our next section, which is speaking about the ways of working. So a lot of UX designers that I speak to are new to UX design, and they also are new to ways of working. So we know about Waterfall and these different methods, right? And now obviously there's big, I shouldn't say recently, it's maybe 10, 15 years people have been working Agile. And how do you think for a UX designer, what are your thoughts on Agile and just where it is currently, and later on we can speak about where it's going, but do you think it's a good way of working, or do you think there are ways for designers, UX designers especially, what are the key things they need to know about working Agile, basically?
So just for those of you that might not be fully versed with the whole thing, I'll try and boil it down in a nutshell. But once upon a time ago, when people were doing software development in particular, there would be 5 big phases. One would be the analysis phase, one would be the design phase, one would be the development phase, and then another one would be the test phase, and then there'd be the kind of deployment rollout phase. And in a nutshell, they're really the flaw with that system is that the stuff that comes out at the end is not necessarily the stuff that's spec'd at the beginning, and things can change without people really understanding why the need for change and all the rest of it. So the thing with Agile is that they kind of squished all that, and instead of having this long drawn out waterfall horizontal process, they turned it around on its head, and they got all of those teams, because they're still essential parts of it. You still need to do analysis, you still need to do design, you still need to do development, but they broke it down into much smaller components, and it's much more vertical and much more collaborative. So now, instead of designers all sitting together and working on a design task that they throw over the wall, now the designers actually sit with the business analysts, they sit with the developers, and actually everybody gets to understand the whole problem together, and actually everybody gets to contribute to the problem solving process and actually come up with a solution together, so that then that your designs can be built. They meet the business need, they meet the customer need, they're technically sound, there's no constraints, etc. And it's actually much more rapid.
Brilliant. Now, what I like is that obviously you have your book, and in your book you have a chapter about agile team structure and the role of a designer. And I wanted to kind of really highlight that one, especially because my entrance into UX design was from I studied architecture, and that really gave me the foundation to move into UX. But for some people are coming from so many different avenues, so psychology. So I spoke to someone, they said, a lawyer, didn't work out for them, they want to move into UX, and a lot of people are coming from graphic design background. So how do you see the UX designer's role in an agile team?
Interesting you should say that while I've got the pen in my hand.
Oh, okay.
So I rarely can talk without holding a pen and without drawing.
All right.
And the reason for that is because I really believe that one of the key skills that a UX designer should have is the ability to sketch. Now, it doesn't matter, we're not looking for Leonardo da Vinci or anything like that. We're just looking for the ability to visually communicate, and I think it's a really, really key thing. And here's the reason why. So imagine we're all sat around at a project table, and we kind of say, right, we've got to go and build a new website, and everybody nods and agrees, and then everybody goes off in the different directions, And actually, what you'll find, and I hope you pick this up on camera, if not, we can do a separate shot afterwards.
We'll do a separate shot after.
We've got dude 1, dude 2, dude 3, and dude 1 goes away, and actually he's thinking of what the website might look like, and in his head it looks like this.
Like a star.
And dude 2 goes away, and he's thinking about the website, and what he might think of is something like this.
Wow.
And then dude 3 goes away, and he's thinking about the website, and actually what he's thinking about, is a completely different thing altogether.
Wow.
And so until you, as the UX designer, actually start to visually facilitate and draw this out on a board, then you have no idea what actually people are thinking. So it's about getting that shared understanding, and I think the power of sketching with a pen, it really quickly enables you to kind of get that shared understanding, get ideas out on the paper, and then have everybody else contribute and kind of say, no, actually I didn't mean that, I meant this. And very quickly you refine the problem down to what is actually the real problem that everybody needs to work on to solve.
Okay, great. And this kind of segues me into my next question, which is so as a designer, we learn Agile, we know Agile, we're working Agile, and then we now are moving into different organizations. How have you found it, moving into organizations that say they're Agile but tend to not be working Agile? Have you been able to help them shift, or have you found it's a massive change of thinking because it's actually a different way of working?
I've experienced lots of different organisations, and sometimes you get Agile within a Waterfall environment. Sometimes people say they do Agile and actually all they do is a stand-up. I think the key thing is just to know your part in the whole place, and if you've got an opportunity to influence it, then great. That's that doesn't happen for everybody, but I think that even if you're not in an Agile environment, you can still behave in an Agile way. So I remember a long time ago I was working at what is now Virgin Media, and we were working very much in a waterfall way, but I still went and sat with the developers when I was designing to make sure that I had the confidence to know that it is something that could be built, and equally to get ideas from them. Or I would actually go and sit with the business guys, and we'd sketch out what could be some of the commercial advantages. So I think just by being very flexible in the way that you work, and to try and think about efficiencies through sketching, through that kind of visual collaboration type method, visual facilitation, and just being open to ideas. I think that means you just embody the spirit of what we're trying to do with Agile, even if you can't always enforce working in an Agile way.
And so the key thing for designers is to try not to work in silos, especially when you're working in a team. Try to be as collaborative as possible. Try to speak to people from different parts of the organisation. People that are not even in your work, maybe not even in your team. Sometimes getting to know the wider business can give you more context as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think talking to different disciplines, so analysts, developers, etc., is really good. I think, but also bouncing off, the other designers who might be in the team. So I know that one of the things that we encourage is kind of doing a weekly creative review where we do peer review. So we talk about some of the design challenges that we've got, and we can all put ideas into the mix, or we'll actually look at what is best practice at the time. And everybody's got different things that they do on the web, for example, and that they can bring in each of their own flavours, the micro interactions they've seen, or the nice effect they've seen on something or another. And we add all those into the mix.
It's true. Even the design meeting we had yesterday. We're looking at so many different web design styles and techniques and different things that people are using, especially interactions, and just some of the subtle things that we found that are really, really good to keep people engaged, which is really good. I kind of want to segue into a new section, which is talking more so about UX design, but in the standpoint of customer experience.
Sure.
So, what is customer experience?
So for me, I really believe that customer experience is the kind of the embodiment of the full, what I call the value chain. It's kind of, sort of corporate-y words that mean, when a customer first finds out about the brand, they've got a need, they kind of then explore whether the company can meet that need. They look at products, they look at prices, they look at all the, it might be anything from, if it's a retail store, the delivery, or, getting a policy in our terms, right the way through to then kind of making that purchase, making that commitment, then having that purchase and commitment fulfilled, the ongoing relationship with the brand then, to everything from kind of customer service to aftercare to upsell, cross-sell, and then the whole way through that life cycle. So that is the entire customer experience, of which I think it's got different names depending on which way you look at it. So I mean, I know there's a big thing around service design. So that is really looking at what is the brand values and how we create a service that kind of, fulfills those brand promises across the entire value chain. And that's really, really important. And I think, UX is in parts a subset of that, so certainly when we're talking about the digital experience, which is where UX comes to it's for really, that's that kind of, it will either be the acquisition part or it will be the post-sales service part where, customers can go on and do kind of, digital self-service. So yeah, I think as UX designers working in a digital environment, it's really, really good to think about where customers have come from, certainly in terms of considering the offline, things that have influenced them getting there, and then potentially what they might do when they leave the website and how you can facilitate that, at the top and the tail of those experiences.
So on that point, you mentioned service design.
Yeah.
And the last agency I worked with, they basically had a service designer in.
Yeah.
What I actually found was that a lot of the work that he did was more research based. It was very research heavy, rather than like reproducing a wireframe or showing something visual. He was more research based in the reasons why customers do what they do, which is really is it would you say is customer experience design but with a different name? And on that point, do you find that UX designers who have these skills are more valuable in the workplace as well?
Ooh, lots of loaded questions there.
Sorry,
no, that's fine. I think I've got it. Remind me if there's any bits I miss. I think there's elements of service design that I don't know that there is a formal definition. I think service design is a part of customer experience design. I think it's one of the tools that you use. I mean, certainly whether you're doing customer experience, service design, UX, I think
so
the key
overlaps.
There are definitely overlaps. Yeah, there's definitely overlaps. But I think some of the key things are, having that similar methodology. I think you need to have proper insights before you start design. Ideally, you need to have that kind of not necessarily deep level ethnographic background, but at least some kind of analytics or something that kind of point to the problems that you're trying to solve.
Yes.
I've lost my thread now.
No, that's really helpful. That actually answers my question, because that shows that for UX designers, they need to have at least some basics in these other skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. And so back to your other point around people that have got an interest or got skills in kind of the broader areas, are they more valuable in the workplace? Yes and no. I guess the one thing, it depends on the job that you're brought in to do. If you're multi-skilled and you like looking at the bigger picture, but you've been put on a very focused micro task, you might find yourself getting frustrated. Equally, if you're in a work environment that are open to thinking about the influences, then actually you will become a really, really valuable asset. So you're not just thinking about those micro interactions, you're actually thinking about the effect on the whole. Absolutely. And I don't know if you're about to ask this question, but I'll prompt it anyway. That I think one of the most important tools that you can have as an experienced designer, whether that's UX, whether that's customer experience or whatever, is the ability to map out those journeys, and ultimately that's what a service designer does. They think about where the customer starts and where the customer ends and all the parts that happen in between time. And that, you don't need to be a whiz in any particular software. You've got to start low fidelity, because you are going to change it. You're going to change it a lot. You're going to iterate a lot. So, start with Post-it notes so you can move them around. Start with a pencil so you can rub it out, or markers and you can scratch it out. Start with paper, because you will tear it up. You'll tear it up and you'll start again, and don't be afraid to do that. It's all about that iterative process and kind of learning as you go. And then my other kind of, being in my bonnet would always be about testing it with customers.
Yeah. You kind of answered my question about the tools that CX designers use, because as a UX designer, there are so many different tools that we can use. So we can use pen and paper, we can use post-it notes, we can use whiteboards, we can use digital tools such as Sketch and Adobe. But what we're finding is that these tools are forever changing.
Yeah.
So really it's to make sure that from a designer standpoint, the basics of how you problem solve, how you find customer insights is always consistent, always improving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a little bit like having a tradesperson and having a big box of tools. You get the right tool out for the job. So I will always, and I've got to encourage every single one of you, always start with pen and paper, or with pencil and or markers. Don't go straight to the computer, because it does constrain your thinking, because all of a sudden you're kind of within the realms, the little box of that particular software that's got its own set of features and functions and interactions, and it does influence what you want to do. So think primarily about what problem you're trying to solve and sketch it out first, and use that to then communicate with your other stakeholders or your other team members that those are your ideas, to get some feedback and to ratify those ideas. I think once you've got that kind of basic foundation sorted, then you can move into whatever tool is appropriate. I mean, the tools come and go, and they change with whatever is the new
buzz.
The new buzz. And they're all equally brilliant. We keep experimenting with all of them. So there's not necessarily one I'd advocate. So this week we're using Marvel. Next week I might be using Atom. The week before I think we were using Axial. So I think they're all interesting, and they're all good to play with. They're all good to know. They're certainly good to have on your CV. But there's not one particular tool I think that is the killer.
It's the killer for all,
Apart from Photoshop and...
It's always a go-to for design, isn't it? But now there's Sketch and so many others. But we always, no matter where we go, we always, let's pull out Photoshop. It's easy.
Well, again, just to kind of show you how long I've been doing this. When I was learning all about it, I was using Photoshop 1. 1. So I think I'll always kind of stick to that. It was always the one that I kind of grew up with, and I really love Photoshop.
I started with Photoshop 3.0.
So you were on layers. I was even working on Photoshop before layers.
And I was using CorelDRAW, and then CorelDRAW. And
wow.
I think I dabbled with a bit of paint, but So on that point, I wanted to kind of look at us going forward, and with like AI is becoming like really big, and like bots is becoming a big thing in apps, and messengers on websites. Customer experience is kind of becoming a bit, it's changing the digital space, So I kind of wanted to say, like, going forward, what do you see are the key, not just skills, because I think the basics of how you find the insight and problem solve are always key. But where do you see customer experience and also user experience going in the future? What do you see are the big things?
I think it's an amazing time to be alive right now. It really is. I mean, technology is kind of coming on in leaps and bounds, and it's changing everything we do. Everything from kind of, culture, the way we communicate. I mean, hey, just even doing this, we wouldn't have been doing this, 10 years ago or whatever. So it's absolutely amazing. And, you have to, if you've got any kind of philosophical element to your brain, you've got to kind of question if what we do is still relevant, is it still valid. Certainly in the advent of templates and web patterns and analytics and big data, you kind of say, well, is design relevant anymore? And I think I've come to the conclusion that it absolutely still is. So I think data gives us the insights to know what the problems are, but you still need designers to kind of then solve those problems. So, and I we might get smart about the tools we use. We might even use, artificial intelligence to kind of, churn some of that data and kind of come up with some of the patterns for us. But I think for a good while, certainly in my lifetime, we're still going to need the human brain to solve problems. And to actually also, I think, to really think empathetically about what customers are trying to achieve, what users are trying to achieve. Each and every one of us, when we start out on a task on the internet, we come with a whole bunch of baggage, kids are screaming, or, the wife's upset, or whatever it is, and having that empathetic way of kind of understanding that people come to a task with this, and how might we help facilitate that in a better way, and kind of thinking around the problem, not just the numbers, not just the data. So keep on.
Have you ever worked with someone that is so data heavy that sometimes it so heavily influences their design that they may lose the qualitative aspect of how you could push that design? Because sometimes data is easy to rely upon. So users drop off at this point, so let's introduce this function or that function. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those types of things.
I don't know that I've ever worked with a designer who's necessarily, kind of, orientated that way, but obviously I've worked with a lot of business people, a lot of, analytics teams. And I think the thing that we bring to that, I mean, I kind of get my geek on a lot because, this is where the kind of crossover of my science brain and my art brain comes together. I really love it. Whilst I will never profess to be good at numbers, the one thing that I do really like to do is see patterns.
Yeah.
And so while the data guys might say to me, this is what this volume of customers are doing at this particular point, the bit that the data can't answer is the question why.
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? So what are the behavioural aspects that's driving them to do that?
Yeah.
And then that's where we, as kind of, certainly thinking about cognitive elements and psychological elements and some of the more softer, brain science elements, if you like, the neuroscience behind it all, I think that's what we as designers then bring into the mix and we add on top of the data, and that's where we start to think about the humans and what tasks and goals they're trying to accomplish.
Wow. Well, on that point, I think we've, covered as much as I wanted to ask you today. How can people get in touch with you if they needed to, Twitter?
Yeah, so standard handle is GUI girl. So GUI as in GUI, graphical user interface, GRRL. So that's me on Twitter and Skype. Or just lindsay.ratcliffe@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Also, I'll put a link to. Have you got a link for your book?
I've got Agile Experience Design is available on Amazon and also the publisher's website. I'm sure Leif will give you the URL later.
Well, thank you for watching Wallace TV today. It's been great. Just follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Subscribe right now. Press that red button right now and subscribe. And literally, guys, just answer. This is the question I want to ask you today. Where do you see customer experience in UX design going in the future? Lindsay's made some really good points, and this is things that we all need to be aware of. But where do you see it going in the future? Take care and improve your life with creative advice. Take care. Thank you. Lindsay, phenomenal. Awesome. This is like so good right now. I feel charged. Again, is that right? All right. I just remembered I have to introduce you.